Okay, welcome if you're watching. I'm just going to give us a few seconds just to make sure we are fully live without any mishaps, and then we'll be starting in a few seconds. Awesome. Okay, welcome to Inside Uni's second Q&A. In this one, we'll be covering life as a science student at Oxford and Cambridge. And thank you for people who have submitted questions in advance. We're going to be just, chatting about them, giving you a chance to talk to us as well. And so the big thing about this call is we've got a set of students, 3 from Oxford, 3 from Cambridge, and myself, I'm also a Cambridge student. And talking about student life as a science student, and this isn't official, so definitely if you've got more official questions, do look at the Oxford and Cambridge websites, but hopefully we can give you a bit more of an insight into what our day-to-day life looks like, and some of the questions we had when we were thinking of applying. The agenda of today's format, so we'll start off with everybody will introduce themselves, and then we'll do a few questions that were submitted in advance. And then after that, you guys can submit questions to us. Just use the YouTube live chat comments on the side, and those questions will come into us, and then we can talk about them. And if you've got follow-up questions, just throw them our way. And so we've got 2 people from the InsideUni team. I'll explain what InsideUni is in a sec. We've got myself, and I'll be acting as the chair on this call. And we've also got Charlotte, who is moderating the comments. Charlotte, if you can just say hi in the live chat. And so you can, just send questions to her, and she can chat back to you and pass stuff on to us. Awesome. So for a quick introduction, I'm Akil, as you all know. I'm a 4th year engineer at Cambridge. And then we'll start off with Sen, who's going to introduce himself.
Hi guys, I'm Sen. I'm a 4th year medical student and engineer at Jesus College, Cambridge. And you might get confused as to why engineering. I'm intercalating in engineering at the moment.
Hi, my name's Or. I'm a 1st year medic at Oxford.
Hi everyone, I'm Mohammed. I'm a 4th year who studied physical natural sciences, specialising in chemistry, in my 3rd year before switching to management, and I'm at Cambridge.
Hello, I'm Toby. I'm a 4th year at Keble College, Oxford. So my first 3 years were just the ordinary physics degree, and for 4th year I changed to maths and theoretical physics.
Hi, I'm Anusha. I'm a 3rd year mathematician at St John's College, Cambridge.
Hi everyone, I'm Leo. I'm a 3rd year computer science student at Oxford.
Awesome. And so there's quite a few subjects here. If you've got any questions on any of them, just shoot us a message. And we're going to start with a few day in the lives. So Anusha, you're going to talk a bit about maths.
Yeah, sure. I'll kick off. So I guess a general day in the life for me, and this is obviously not a blanket thing. For mathematicians, we have lectures in the morning. So I'd wake up, get to probably like a 9 a.m., 10 a.m. lecture, 2 to 3 hours of lectures, come back to my room or the library, work on the example sheets for the rest of the day. So all mathematician work is just problem sheets that we get on each of our courses. And we work and we submit those for supervisions, which is our like one-on-one, one-on-two style teaching. So I'd work on that in the afternoon, maybe have a supervision in the afternoon as well, perhaps. Catch up with some friends in the evening once I've done all my work, and do some various activities and socials in the evening. I try and keep my evenings as free as possible, so that I can just work during the day.
So for me as a 1st year medic, we tend to have 9 a.m.s every day. Our mornings tend to be about 9 to 1 in the faculty. Either we'll have like 3 lectures with an hour in between, in which I'll go to the library for a bit and write an essay or just do some tutorial work. Or sometimes we'll have like 1 lecture and then a couple of hours of labs or dissection room or some sort of practical. I'll then go back to college for lunch. Then in the afternoons, I'll typically be in the library working on some tutorial work. And then we'll have a tutorial kind of normally just before dinner time. I'll then go back to college for dinner. Then in the evenings, I tend to have football training or rowing training. And then normally from about 9 o'clock, I spend my evenings with my mates in the beer cellar, just chatting and catching up on our days.
As a physicist, it's very similar to maths, with lectures in the morning, problem sheets in the afternoon, except kind of one day a week you go into the lab, kind of run some experiments, and kind of once a year you have to type up a report. Something I think that would be different is that I think, at least in Keble, we always did our problem sets together. So this is stuck in place. There's a whiteboard down there. Yeah, so we'd often just kind of all go to someone's room and just kind of do all the problem sets together if we had kind of the time.
And something that some of those guys had mentioned, I think was briefly explained, but just to recap, so in Cambridge, you have something called supervisions, and in Oxford, they're tutorials or shoots. And these are kind of, it's a bit like being, it's normally like 2 students and 1 academic, and you quite often have these problem sheets that you've been given in a lecture to work on, and you just take them there and you go and discuss them, or any work that you get stuck on. Another thing which I did forget to mention at the start, so I will mention it now, what is InsideUni? So InsideUni is, it's a non-profit and it's a free crowdsourced website that we've set up. And what we do is we crowdsource a lot of advice about applying to universities. At the moment, we're mainly focused on Oxford and Cambridge, from current students who are there, and we put it on this free website so that anybody can see. And we're also just building up a database of lots of different university support schemes, or other kind of insight programs or subject resources you can use when you're getting ready to apply. And the idea is just to make sure everybody can apply to university, feeling that they've got the support or access to the resources that they need. And you can find that website at insideuni.org, which Charlotte will put in the live chat. Great, and definitely at any point, just if you've got questions, please just put them in the chat, or if you want to tell us what subjects you're interested in, or a particular university you're interested in, just definitely put that in there, because we can use it to shape what we talk about. What we're going to do in this section is we've had a few questions that have come in advance. So we'll talk about them. The first one we had is actually one that Charlotte is well placed to answer. And it's somebody asking, who's an international, if you're an international, do professors tailor the questions to you in your interview? And will they acknowledge that you know less subject-specific terms in English? And so I'll answer on Charlotte's behalf, but definitely feel free to ask us something in the comments if you've got more questions on it. So in Charlotte's case, she came from a French school and didn't take A-levels, and her math syllabus was slightly different in that they learn things in a different order. So the first thing she did is just compared it to the admissions test syllabus for Oxford to make sure that she knew the stuff required. And the questions would have been the same for her as they would have been for other people. But the one thing she did say is it's fine if you don't know specific terms. Academics realize you may not have encountered stuff before. So with her, it was matrices, which she didn't know what they were in English. And so the interviewer just explained it to her and she still did the question. And the big thing is they want to test if you know the knowledge, not if you know all these technical terms in English. But of course, it is good to know the most, like the key or the most important subject-specific terms in English. Leo, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah. So I'm from Canada, so I had a similar experience, sort of. So when I was in the interview, I didn't know a term like gradients, for example. And in my interview, when I asked him what it was, he showed it to me and he explained it through. And then I knew that there was a similar term in Canada, which we use, derivatives. And I also had a similar experience where my interview questions were really similar. And yeah, they seem to be quite open to explaining things to you during the interview.
And another question we had is, do you have to study on weekends? So Anusha's going to start with this one.
Yeah, so the weird thing or the different thing about university compared to school is that you can really structure your time and the amount of time you work and when you work as you want. So it depends on how well you work in certain environments, certain days, whether you are a morning worker or an evening worker. It's not strict like 9 to 5 school kind of thing. So yes, you can work on weekends if you want to. Some people do have lectures on Saturdays. As a mathematician in first and third year, I had lectures on Saturdays, and sometimes I'd have a supervision on Saturday as well, and I'd have deadlines on Sundays. So I would often work on the weekends just because it suited me. But as I said, it really just depends on your schedule. Things aren't as sort of clear-cut as school. So it's up to you to figure out how you want to work, when you want to work. And it just also it depends on your structure of the week.
So at Oxford, there isn't no subjects that I know of have lectures or anything on the weekend. I've been offered to have a tutorial on the weekend, but we've sort of gone against that and said no. So tutorials, again, are just you planning with your tutor when you're free and when they're free. And so it's very much you plan your own time. So you don't have to work on the weekends, but it definitely helps if you do, especially for tutorial work and writing essays. It's like the best time where you can just sit in the library for 6 hours and get an essay done. But yeah, it's very much just plan your own time. And if you don't want to, if you want to go home for the weekend, you can. But I would recommend working on the weekend.
So, hi everyone. One of the questions we've got that's come in is, what does natural sciences mean at Cambridge, and how does it differ to the Oxford science courses? So, if you love chemistry, physics, or biology and wish to study any of them at Cambridge, the course you'd apply for in UCAS is called Natural Sciences. And the key difference from Oxford is you can't study just physics, just biology, or just chemistry in Cambridge. Rather, the course is designed to provide breadth in first year, where you study multiple sciences, then depth in subsequent years as you specialize. And what this means is you can blur the boundaries between the different sciences by taking modules that you wouldn't have necessarily considered while in school. So, for example, in my first year, in addition to the classic combo of chemistry, physics, and maths, I took material science, an area that I knew nothing about before coming to Cambridge, but enjoyed it so much in my first year that I took it alongside chemistry in my second year. And the course construction of natural sciences compels you to consider alternatives like material science, earth sciences, or even blending physical and biological options that you're interested in. So many of my friends came to Cambridge with their hearts set on one subject, for example, say physics, but the course flexibility broadens your horizons to new possibilities. And a lot of them ended up changing their minds about which subject they wanted to specialize in. And in fact, you don't have to specialize if you don't want to, and you can choose to study broadly physical or broadly biological sciences. Another sort of difference with Oxford specifically for chemistry, which was a subject I was interested in, is you can choose to graduate after 3 years, whereas the Oxford chemistry course is a 4-year course.
Yeah, so I think the natural sciences and having to do a range is a reason why a lot of people might actually pick Oxford as well. They are done at A-levels with a broad knowledge and want to specialize earlier. I think obviously that's personal. But it also does mean that I'm assuming, Mohammed, you would have shared lectures with other scientists, whereas in Oxford, everyone in your lecture is a physicist. And so that potentially has the advantage of having a lecture series more specifically tailored to kind of one flow, so they know more what you would know, what you won't know. I think maybe that's an advantage of a more narrow course.
Awesome, thanks, Toby.
Okay.
So we've had one question coming in. What is the best way you found to prepare for the interview process? I'm going to do a quick plug here for InsideUni. So just go back to grid view. So InsideUni, we do a lot of crowdsourcing, a lot of people, how they prepared for the interview, the thoughts they went through. And it can differ so much between different people. Some people will say one thing and some other people can do the opposite. So everything we say here, just bear in mind, we're just one person. And yeah, definitely always the university advice. They do have a lot of support for this kind of stuff on the website. So do check that out. Sen, do you want to start us off?
So yes, that's a really good question, and it's a question I asked myself quite a lot when I was applying. And having prepared myself and having gone through interviews myself as well, 3 of them in fact for medicine at Jesus College, I think one of the most important things you can do is have sort of practice interviews whether that's just talking with your friends in the playground, whether that's, asking your parents to ask you a few questions, or spending time with your teacher, your biology teacher, for example. Just sitting down and just discussing problems out loud. That's one of the key things you can do to practice, mainly because when you're in an Oxbridge interview, I don't think they actually necessarily want you to get every single question correct. They want to hear how you think. They want to hear how you talk through the problem step by step, how you're breaking it down and how you're approaching it. And one of the only ways you can develop that is by practicing doing that. And so, reading loads of books and all is useful, but make sure you put it into practice by having conversations with your friends, teachers, and family if you can.
And just to add into that, I never had a proper mock interview. What I did was sort of just talk to myself in the shower, just to practice talking and thinking out loud, because that's essentially what they're looking for, is just to see how you think and if they'll be able to teach you. And I think the only thing they're really expecting you to know is the subjects that you do at school and anything that you've put on your personal statement. Other than that, you don't have to worry about learning everything there is to know about medicine or whatever subject it is. It's just make sure you know your A levels quite well, and then just practice talking out loud, I think.
Yeah, so to add in a few more things. So one thing that I found helpful while doing an interview was there are some practice problems on the Oxford Uni website, particularly for computer science, at least when I was applying. And it was really helpful to try to practice explaining concepts to other people, maybe taking a practice problem and explaining your thought process to it to someone who doesn't know the background. And leading back to a question about what to do if you don't know some English words, one thing that I've heard was particularly helpful was if you can explain your math in a logical way, then oftentimes that can say more than just words.
And I guess I can talk specifically a little bit about maths, but quite similar to the rest of the subjects, because there's a bit of maths in every one of them. What I tried to do a lot was I used to take the train to school every morning, and on the train, I just quickly think of a really random graph and just sketch it and just see how good I could get at graph sketching, which is a really, really important thing for interviews. I'm not saying that I'll definitely come up in an interview, but it's just a really good idea of how to sort of get your ideas on paper, and also explaining it to people. I'd explain concepts that are quite hard to my mum, who has no maths background, just to see if she could understand it. And that's really important in interviews, seeing that you fully understand something so that you're able to explain it to somebody else.
You can see on the natural sciences front, there are a lot of similarities with what others have mentioned. You can see an underlying theme of practicing questions. And I think that, for me at least, was one of the most useful ways of preparing. So I use different resources like doing past papers from A levels, but even the university at Cambridge, the physics department have a useful website called Isaac Physics. So practicing problems over there, which I found in my experience were similar to the interview style, and practicing them with friends would just allow you to push each other a little bit further and work together to break down some of the problems which may have been a bit trickier for you to solve on your own. The only other advice I'd sort of give would be to sort of reread your personal statement, go over any topics that you've mentioned over there. And if you've read a book, maybe, and it was a while ago, maybe sort of have a refresher. If you made some notes on it, go over those notes again. But that sort of would be what I would do.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with all of those. So the next question that came through was, do GCSE grades matter? And as far as I remember, they don't think they explicitly ask for a certain number of A stars or anything. Because obviously that will depend on your school, because you go to a very good school, getting 11 A stars is a lot more common than kind of people who went to state school. So, I mean, they're going to have to be okay or good, but they don't have to be amazing. So personally, I got 6 A stars and a few more A's, and I think a B in short course PE, which we all had to take. But I don't think they actually, we have to put them down, but I don't think they're ever mentioned again. I mean, even for AS, I got a C in AS philosophy, which I then dropped. But yeah, I think as long as the subjects you're applying for are the ones you have the better grades in, And I remember the most important thing was the entrance exam and your interview. Once you get that, like if you can do well in the entrance exam, that's going to outshine whether or not someone's got 13 A stars.
And I just want to jump in there, just to make a few like quick disclaimers, I guess. But the other thing is you've got to remember that so most of us will have applied when ASs were still a thing. And that means the dynamic has changed in terms of the exams you have sat. So just definitely bear in mind, the university, they get asked this quite a lot. So again, their kind of stuff is a good place to go to. Yeah, and I mean, one thing particularly with Cambridge, they are aware a lot of people come from all sorts of different backgrounds. And I mean, I'm sure Oxford are aware as well. And this means that, so I've got some friends who have got kind of a different spread of exam grades, but in the context of the sort of support they had or the school situation they had, then yeah, the universities were aware of that, and they really did make an effort to consider how have people worked in the situation they've got. So that's super important to bear in mind.
Yeah, so to add more about the GCSEs, yeah, again, I don't think they matter as much as obviously your A levels and your entrance exams. I was the year where it actually changed, so AS levels were dropped in my year, and it was the first year that they were dropped. And that year there was like a whole thing, they thought the GCSEs were going to matter more, but it wasn't specifically the case for my subject. For maths, they really only sort of cared about how much maths you were doing, how good you were at maths, and how passionate you were about that. But I think for other subjects like medicine, it might be slightly different.
Yeah, so just to add in, for medicine at Oxford specifically, they look at GCSEs a lot. It makes up 50% of whether they take you for interview. So they rank you based on your GCSEs and your BMAT, but they definitely contextualize it to how you did in comparison to your school. So if you got 6 A stars, but everyone else at your school didn't do quite as well, that would look a lot better than somebody who came from a really good school and got 9 A stars. So they do definitely matter if you want to do medicine at Oxford, but it's different for Cambridge, I think. So Sen can talk about that.
Sen, did you have any comments on that?
Yes, so Oxford, of course, the GCSEs are very important. I think back when I was applying, the GCSEs weren't so important. They were just taken into the holistic overview of a candidate. So the Cambridge website didn't really say that you had to get a certain number of A stars. And that was quite nice, because then I realized that they'd look at your application overall. So let's say you didn't do as well in your GCSEs, but then did very well in your A-level years, then they'll be like, okay, the student has maybe turned around and they've managed to work hard and they've wanted to prove themselves. So that's the nice thing about the Cambridge application, I think.
Great. And again, just the big thing is just check the university websites, because at the end of the day, they'll tell you what they want, and different courses have slightly different things that they may look for or value. Great. And we've had a question that came in about the BMAT. How long did you prepare for the BMAT? So All's going to start us off with this one.
So personally, I did 2 months revision, but not very intense. So I did 1 past paper every Sunday for 2 months. So if you go onto the Cambridge website, they've got all of the past papers for all of the BMATs sat since about 2009. And I literally just worked my way through all of them every Sunday morning. I just sat and did a paper. And then in the week leading up to it, I kind of went over my GCSE science and made sure I was familiar with all the concepts. But I don't think I wasn't that intense in my revision. It was literally just once a week and then a bit more frequent towards the actual exam date.
So with me, it was a little different, because I'd always been told the BMAT was an important exam, and because like the BMAT timing wise is situated so that you can actually work hard for it despite your previous grades. So let's say your GCSEs aren't the best and your A levels weren't ideal. The BMAT is an opportunity for you to work hard again and show that you can do well in an exam. And so I worked for similar to Aura around 2-3 months before my exam. Initially starting off a bit more relaxed, because I was trying to introduce myself to the concepts, revise what I needed, because the BMAT GCSE syllabus for section 2, it's very specific, and they've even got like an online guide that they publish. So if you go on the BMAT website, they make like a textbook of all the science you need to know, which is fantastic. So I'd go through this, reading it before going to sleep or something, very casual. But similar to Oregon, I did practice papers very early because I wanted to see how they were asking the questions and how I needed to apply my knowledge of the science in those questions. And again, because the BMAT is multiple choice, there are, they literally ask the questions in ways where if you make a silly mistake, that'll be one of the options. And so you have to be very thorough with your working out. So the last month, I'd say I was working maybe an hour every evening just to make sure that I was really putting time into the BMAT, because for Cambridge especially, talking to past students, the BMAT, and even talking to admission students actually, the BMAT, they said, because it's so close to the interviews, it's a very good opportunity for students to show their worth. Now, the last key point is the essay section. So BMAT consists of section 1, section 2, but also the essay. And I'd say it's really important that you try and practice writing a few essays for two main reasons. Number one, you've got to write an essay, plan and write the essay in half an hour. Number two, you have to, fit that whole essay into a piece of paper that's smaller than an A4 piece of paper. So it's very tight on space and tight on time. And so early on, in the summer holidays, I'd look at a few BMAT questions randomly and I'd try and think about what sort of arguments I'd make. And I really nailed the sort of basics of getting a sort of mediocre score in the BMAT. So the 3A is the medium score for the BMAT. And then there are different tiers. So 3A goes to 4A, goes to 5A. And you have to put in like different levels of knowledge to get the 4A and 5A. Now, do remember, like 4 and above is only scored by 20% of candidates. So getting a 3A is pretty damn good. And the importance of the essay section is that if you get like a score below 3, for Cambridge especially, they don't get too keen about you. So the content score is really important for Cambridge because it shows that you can look at an essay, you can work out what arguments to put forward, and you can display them in a coherent manner. And the Cambridge course and Oxford course, actually, they rely heavily on essays. So this is a good example for you to show the BMAT examiners and admissions tutors that you can write a good essay in time conditions.
So we've had
and just, I was just going to quickly jump in. BMAT, what does it stand for again?
Biomedical admissions test.
And that's just for medicine, or do you have it for other subjects as well?
For Oxford, it's also for biomed, but I think that's it.
Okay.
So we've had another question in saying, what's the best way to choose between Oxford and Cambridge for medicine? I personally didn't look into Cambridge that much because I went on an Oxford summer school, and that was like what kind of gave me the impression that Oxford was for me. However, I'd say something to definitely think about is what Oxford and Cambridge look at. So Oxford care more about BMAT and GCSEs, whereas Cambridge look more at your A-level predicted grades. And also Oxford interview everybody at 2 separate colleges. So you have 4 interviews in total, whereas I think it's different at Cambridge. But again, I didn't look into Cambridge that much, so I don't have a lot to say.
I think for me, I was a bit like, well, they're both really good universities, and I was applying to both of them as my dream university for medicine. So I considered Oxford, I considered Cambridge, and I chose Cambridge simply because I had visited Cambridge a few more times. And so a really important part when choosing the two is, you visit both, which one do you like the most? And, they both require good grades. So it's not, and they're so similar that it's not really a big difference going to either one in the grand scheme of things. But my main reasons for Cambridge were I just loved the city. It was so beautiful. The Cambridge course in 3rd year was also very flexible. I could do whatever subject I could that I wanted to specialize in. And also I just liked how I heard that Cambridge was very flat. And as a keen cyclist and as a keen rower, I was like, well, if I have a very flat, place to cycle about on, I can do loads more miles and I can boast about it to my friends back home. So yeah, Oxford's very hilly, and I know there's a big hill you have to go up towards the hospital. So yeah, hills aren't my friends.
And just what? Go on.
Just to clarify what Unique is. Unique is a residential summer school. So you spend a week in Oxford, and it's an access summer school. So it's for kids from state schools and from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And yeah, you just get to spend a week with ambassadors who do your subject. You can ask them loads of questions. You get to go to lectures and just experience what uni life at Oxford is actually like.
And adding in quickly, so similar to Unique at Oxford, there are Cambridge summer schools in Cambridge. And so I suggest you apply to all of these, and they are very generous with the number of places they have, and it's amazing. I had some friends who spent 3 days at a college on a subject experience weekends, but also they have taster days and medicine masterclasses. So throughout the year, they hold different events for different subjects, which are really nice because then you get Cambridge lecturers spending a day with you teaching Cambridge level stuff, which sort of gives you an idea of what level you have to be at if you want to be at the university once you start studying, of course. But also you get to talk to current students. So it's really nice and quite inspiring. And I think personally going to those events made me work harder and more get up for the process.
And so for summer schools, there's the Sutton Trust Summer School, which is a really brilliant one. And then, yeah, unfortunately this year with the lockdown, it's a bit uncertain what will be happening with all of these things. But I know, so with Cambridge, they are doing some kind of virtual open days. So definitely check out the website for that. And another thing which kind of Senna sort of talked about in his answer is that the course is really one of the biggest things that's going to differ between the universities. And that's what's worth looking at. A lot of other aspects of life are fairly similar between the two universities. The cities are slightly different, but really the course is something that is going to be a big factor of your life. So worth looking into.
So our next question is, does the college you go to affect the course, or is it just about extracurriculars? So I think the colleges are more similar than they are different, but there are subtle differences that do apply to the course. I think in my case, like one of the main ones is the number of people studying your course at your college. So I study at St. Catherine's College, and compared to some of the other colleges, it has a larger proportion of natural scientists. So that is certainly a factor that can affect the course. Another thing is obviously location, so proximity to the department. I mean, one of the reasons I did choose the college is that it's not too far from the lectures, so you can wake up a little bit later and still make it on time. And the last thing is probably sort of certain supervisors and lecturers. So academics will be associated and affiliated with certain colleges, and therefore are more likely to then supervise students at those particular colleges. And so that's really like one of the few differences. However, generally, like the university experience is sort of more important than the just the collegiate experience. And sorry, and also just to clarify, like a supervisor is an academic that is the one who's sort of responsible for teaching you in the small group teaching. But there's still no guarantee that a supervisor at a certain college will necessarily supervise you. It's that if they do supervise, they tend to supervise at that specific college.
Yeah, so I'm just going to add on to that. In Oxford, we have things like tutorials, and our tutorials are with the academics of the college as well. So depending on who is the computer science tutor or the subject-specific tutor in a college, oftentimes they will be the one to supervise you, and that might determine what kind of college you want to go to. Furthermore, they have different number of students in each college, so the environment will be quite different. Oftentimes, the college is a big part of your life in Oxford and Cambridge, so you'll see like you might end up hanging out with people within your college. So for me, one of the things I considered when I was applying to Oxford was the number of students in my college, because I enjoy collaborating with other students and discussing problem sheets and ideas and project ideas, things like that. So I picked a college that had more computer science students.
And yeah, just another point to add on those with the supervisors or the tutors you get, particularly as you get further into the degree, they won't always have to be at your college. So for example, for me, I actually have quite a few supervisors who are at other colleges because of the courses I take, and the best people to supervise them are scattered all over the university. We've had a fairly specific question about how many A stars you need for Oxford Med School. I mean, the big thing is they do contextualize your admission, and there are many different aspects of it. And with both universities, they do kind of look at a set of these things. So kind of as students, we just can't comment on that because there's so many things in there. But there are certainly things you can do just in terms of, it's really, obviously, I mean, it's worth studying as best as you can, but then even getting ready for the admissions tests, really developing an interest in your subject. So if you have got an interview, there's kind of, you're just interested and engaged in it and you just want to learn and ask more. And I think that's definitely important to bear in mind. Or is there anything you want to add on this stuff?
Yeah, so just specifically for medicine at Oxford, they are looking at your GCSEs and your BMAT to get an interview. So even if you go to a public school, that's not going to like put anything down against your application. It's just that if you do go to a poorer school, then not poorer school, but a school with less good grades, then they're going to contextualize that. But they're not putting anything against anyone going to public schools. And they're not going to make it harder for you for any specific reason. But yeah, just do as well as you can on the BMAT and you will probably get an interview.
Great. We've had a question. How long did you prepare for, I don't actually know how this is said, the ENGAA. I believe that refers to the engineering exam. So, and if it doesn't, just comment on the live chat as to which admissions test you meant. So the two engineers we've got on the call, Sen and myself, we both applied before you had to sit it. So unfortunately, we can't comment on that much. I don't know if anybody else sat any similar exams to do with maybe the maths or PAT or something that could comment.
So in Oxford, engineers and physicists both do something called the physics aptitude test, the PAT. And so what I did for that is the same as Anusha did for maths, or for the BMAT, was again every Sunday for a couple of months before doing the past papers, emailing. Then if I was a question I couldn't do or struggled with or thought there might be an easier way, would email just one of my A-level teachers, and they would be able to offer advice. And then kind of in the week before, because I think the week before the exam was the bank holiday, was the half term, there were a couple of topics that occurred a lot, which I wasn't very strong on or as strong on. So I kind of just got out a textbook and just did a load of kind of simpler problems on those just to kind of get that up to speed.
Yeah, so for computer science as well, and I think maths at Oxford, we take this exam called MAT, which I think is called the Mathematics Admissions Test. And similar to Toby, what I did was I took a couple of the past papers and then just ran through them. And I think that there might have been like sample solutions for it online. So I would compare my answers with those, or if there's a question I couldn't do, I would look it up and try to learn like the concept for it.
For engineering specifically, another really good website, I believe it's I Want to Study Engineering. It's either .org or .com. Charlotte will post a link, which I'll send to her. And that is made by the Cambridge Engineering Department. Has lots of like practice engineering interview style questions. I don't know how well it scales for the admissions test, but certainly for the interview, it's a really nice way to get thinking about engineering and maths kind of questions.
Just one thing I want to add into that. For computer science and maths, and when you do the MAT exam, they'll have like a different set of problems near the end, where it will be either computer science specific or more math specific, but they don't require that you know computer science knowledge for it. It's normally just a bit more things that would be related to computer science, but not computer science strictly.
And I guess for maths, the main thing with Cambridge is STEP. So I guess if you've considered maths at Cambridge, then you will have heard of STEP. STEP is really different from a lot of all the other admissions tests, actually, because you sit it, it's called STEP for the 6th term examination paper. And you sit it at the same time as you sit your A-levels. So at the end of year 13, which is a few months after, which is around 6 months after you would get your offer. So it's like a post-offer admissions test. And STEP is really important because it's one of your offer is based on what you get in STEP and what you get in your A-levels. And for STEP, I would really recommend this Cambridge STEP support program that's run by the faculty. They've set up a brilliant resource of sort of STEP problems and like just practice problems and ways to think about approaching STEP papers and STEP questions, because they're so different from A-level questions, and they can seem quite daunting at first, but getting started on that and just progressing through all of the different like challenges and like problem sheets they have will get you in really good stead for STEP. And the main thing with admissions tests, all admissions tests, is practice. If you keep practicing and if you do as much of maths as possible, you get familiar with it and you get a lot more experienced. And that's really the important thing.
So we've had another question coming in saying, how do you show passion for a subject, medicine in particular? So this kind of goes for all the subjects, but I would just say read around your subject. You can go to different lectures. So I personally went to 3 lectures at the Royal Society of Medicine in London. So if you live in or around London, they're really good lectures to go to. And just kind of show that you've done more work than just your A-levels and just working on your A-levels, and just, you know, prove that you've got a proper, it's hard to answer the question about using the word passion, but like, yeah, passion for your subject.
I think for medicine, although difficult now during coronavirus, one of the things that Cambridge said, one of the admissions tutors when I was applying, was that passion you can show through doing lots of stuff. One of the big things is by doing some volunteering, because it shows that you've given up your free time that you'd otherwise spend, let's say, you know, playing around or, you know, playing games on a console or something like that. And you've, you know, gone and helped the community, but also whilst doing this volunteering or something, you've, you know, developed some good communication skills. So passion for medicine, I'd say, important to go to lectures, important to read books, but also do activities which show that you've actively tried to improve certain skills you might need as, you know, as a doctor one day. Now, volunteering can be at a care home, can be for St. John's Ambulance, or, you know, even just at your local hospital. But I'd recommend for now, keep it in mind. And once this coronavirus thing has passed over a bit, start later. But for those of you watching in your GCSE or sort of early A-level years, or maybe not the first year of A-level because you're applying, but if you're GCSE and before GCSE, then it's very much something to consider.
And I think with subjects on the whole, there's many ways you can show your passion. But certainly even if you don't have access to, I mean, normally most places have a local museum, but if you don't have access to any big museums, you can pop down to your local library, find some books on the topic you find interesting. And also there's so much stuff online, even just YouTube videos, to start getting to something that just gets you excited about your subject and something you want to talk about. So Leo, do you want to pick up the next question?
I forgot I was muted. We have a new question that came in. What are the best books any of you have read on math, computer science, or on like other subjects? So for me, I had a kind of like a strange route into studying computer science and maths. So I didn't read that many books. I primarily did like contests and stuff like that to practice learning these things, and would study the things that relate to that. Yeah, does anyone else want to take this question?
So for physics, I think there's a couple of standard books, kind of Stephen Hawking books, and I think the Brian Cox ones, the Feynman, are very standard, and most people will have read similar books, the very popular ones. But I think the very best book, and it's the only book I think at level that kind of has A-level maths in it, and pushes beyond, is The Theoretical Minimum by Leonard Susskind. It's a bit harder than the other books. It does have maths in, but it's definitely worth reading. That and Kit Thorne, Black Holes and Time Warps. I think they're the two that would push above just the Brian Cox documentary kind of type books.
Yeah. I guess I have one thing to add. Since computer science is a relatively newer subject, and there's actually a lot of material that you can find online on computer science, especially blogs. Those tend to be quite helpful, and they're often very approachable. So if you want to know something about a subject in computer science, then you could probably find it online.
I can speak a little bit about maths. So with maths, I'd say there's kind of two types of books. There's your popular maths books that kind of just talk about like subjects very briefly, but they're kind of fun to read, and it can get you really interested in certain things. Or there's sort of books that actually have maths in and you do maths. And I think, for example, like the UKMT are like they do all the maths challenges and stuff, and they have some really good books where you actually do maths problems. But also you can read the popular books. I only mentioned, I think, one book in my personal statement, and I can't really remember what that book is now, but I would say the most important thing for maths is doing maths as opposed to like reading about maths just for the sake of it. And what they really like to see is that you've shown interest in a certain area. If you have that interest in a certain area, for example, like you read about a thing and that thing interested you so much that you read a little bit more about it or watched some YouTube videos on it, like some theory or various things. But I'd say with maths, doing maths is the most important thing you can do to prepare.
We've had another question about, do you have any recommendations for engineering in terms of reading? So the department have like a really good reading list for this, and just pick anything off there that takes your fancy. There's a book, I believe it's called Sustainability Without the Hot Air. It's definitely on that list and everybody seems to read that and they'd love it. I haven't. Actually, I read, it was the most random book I found in the library one day about engineering in ancient Greece. And it was kind of this dusty book, not on any reading list, and it was still really interesting. So again, pick stuff you're interested, and the websites are a good place to look, the university websites.
And if I can add something quickly, sorry. For engineering, having started engineering in third year, one of, although they're not books, there are two really good YouTube channels which helped me think more like an engineer. Number one was Real Engineering, and another one was Engineering Explained. So although you read loads of books, and that's really good for the personal statement, just to sort of expose yourself to more like engineering type thinking, these channels are really good as well for you to just watch, and they're also quite fun as well. So you'll gain some general knowledge also.
I'll just ping one more thing in. So in Oxford, at least, they don't require that you know computer science before coming in, and because they understand, like in some schools, they don't offer it. So oftentimes, that if you're like plan on interviewing there, then it's often best to prepare for something like maths related, since they know that computer science isn't offered everywhere.
I would also say that learning to program would be a huge benefit, because it shows that, you know, you can read a book and not take anything in, but if you've learned to program, that shows a lot of work, and it's also really useful for the degree. Like if you can, there have just been problem sheets where I have like just typed up a bit of code and printed that off instead of actually doing the maths, and they're happy with that. And as instead of sometimes instead of labs, we have to do coding projects. So even in physics, and I know I live with an engineer who agrees with this, he's like learning to program. Even just a tiny bit of experience would be really useful. Yeah,
I would agree. It's helpful to know how to program, because they won't teach you a language from the start. They won't teach you like how to program step by step, like how would you write a Python script, how would you write a different script. But overall, the focus they have during the interviews will be math related, but you'll be doing many programming assignments. So it's really helpful to also have that background.
For natural sciences, given how broad the course is, there's simply sort of too many books that you could potentially read. And I think the department website is a very good place to start, and it breaks it down quite nicely per subject, per module. So I had a look at, like, chemistry was the main area that I was really interested in. So I had a look at the recommended reading for chemistry and decided to have a look at those books. But I mean, I definitely would echo sort of Anusha's point much earlier in that reading's all well and good, but I do think certainly for natural sciences, practicing actually doing the problems or applying that knowledge is quite crucial and more important. So wherever you can, having the opportunity to do questions as well, I'd take that.
Great, thanks. And we've had a few more questions coming in about fairly specific kind of situations with grades. And again, it's just because it does depend on the context. Yeah, really, it's kind of the admissions tutors are the best people to answer that. And as students, we've only got our experience, so can't really speak for them. I'm just having a look at what other questions we've got coming in. So we've had one about what programming languages are most useful to know. Toby, do you want to start us off?
Yes. So I'd say most programming languages are kind of similar. So I think I started with Java, but what I've since coming here, I've done Python, Mathematica, MATLAB, and basically most of my like the structures and the ideas are the same across all of them. So it's best to learn just whichever one you learn. It's the same skills, but on top of that, I would say Python is probably the best starting language. It's got like probably the smallest learning curve and the smallest amount of knowledge needed to create a graph or a simulation or actually do something that isn't just text on the screen. So that's probably the best starting one.
For natural sciences, I just want to start by saying it's not necessary at all to know programming before, and everything that you would need to know you'd be taught when you get here. In first year, that's in physical natural sciences, it's very limited, but they will teach you how to use MATLAB, but primarily for scientific purposes. So that's producing graphs and visualizing data. In the options that I took in future years, so particularly for chemistry and on the physical and theoretical side, we were also taught Mathematica, but that really was about the extent of it. And everything is very sort of thoroughly taught. There's a good course book, which you can refer to if you're stuck. So it doesn't require any previous knowledge.
Yeah, so for computer science, the programming languages that we use in courses tend to vary quite a bit depending on who is the course instructor. So we might explore languages like Scala, Python, Java, C++, and some programming languages that are used only in Oxford, but we don't really go in depth into the language. So they don't require you to know the specifics of them, but more just how to use some of it to implement some algorithms. But if I were to say like a programming language that is pretty useful to know would be like an imperative programming language. So that's languages like Java, C++, or Python, just to get a feel of programming imperatively.
Brilliant. Thank you, Leo. So we're coming to the end of the hour, but thank you so much, like everybody. Loads of really great questions there. And yeah, just really interesting to hear. And I think many of us, we had those similar things when we were applying. So you can definitely empathize with that. So we've run out of time for more questions on this session. But definitely, if there's more things that you want to know or other topics you want to know about, this is obviously being quite science heavy. There's many other aspects to life at Oxford and Cambridge. I mean, both academic and non-academic as well. And we will be holding sessions for those in the future. So what Charlotte will be doing afterwards is just putting a link to our Google form where you can ask questions. It will be for this session, but we'll just pick them up and put them on for the next session. And you can also find InsideUni on Facebook, on Twitter, that's inside_uni, Insta, inside.uni, and you can contact us on any of those platforms, or just just follow and see what's going on there, and we'll keep you in the loop with what's going on. And definitely, as we're wrapping up, if there's any other questions you have got, you can just put them in the chat and we'll take note of them for a future Q&A. Yeah, I'll give it like just a minute or so if people have things that they want to put in the chat. And yeah, we kind of covered all sorts today. We looked at a few different subjects, ways to prepare, a bit of what life was like as well. And yeah, I'm just having a look to make sure. I think one thing we can end with is everybody's just going to super quickly go through just a one-liner, one of the like the best free resources used when applying. And we'll start off with Sen.
I'd say it's the wealth of books that you have available in your local libraries or from your school libraries and online as well. Just all the resources you can find, they're the best thing you can use.
Me, it was definitely the unique residential summer school that I went on. So if you're in year 11 and you come from a state school, I'd definitely recommend applying to that.
I remember a website called Madass Maths, or Mad AS Maths, and it's just a bank of A-level maths questions, but kind of they are a bit interesting, a bit harder. So good for either entrance exam or just revising for A-levels as well.
For physical natural sciences, the department has made a very good website called Isaac Physics, which has great practice problems for maths, for physics, and it both sort of teaches you the concepts and shows you the sort of video solutions of how to approach questions. So I found that quite useful.
For maths, I'd say the faculty STEP support program that they've recently made is really, really good for preparing for STEP. And also Stephen Siklos has written a book that sort of guides you through STEP questions, and that's really fantastic, and it's free and it's online.
I found the Oxford Uni website, the computer science sample interview questions to be quite helpful, and looking at like full solution contest questions or like map questions to learn how to explain these concepts.
I just wanted to clarify about Unique. Unique is completely free. They pay for all your food. You stay in a Oxford college, and everything's free. So yeah, if you're in year 11, I think the application's open in December, and it is super competitive, but it's definitely worth applying.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in, and well, hopefully we'll see you at the next Q&A. Bye.